Don't change that dial. It's time for your go-to source for all things entertainment and caffeinated. Now give it up and welcome to the stage, Eva and DJ!
I'm DJ Blokzyl.
And I'm Eva Crowe.
And this is the Inks and Lattes podcast, where we're spilling the ink and dishing out drinks.
So DJ and I are both members of the Creative Coffee Cafe Discord network, an amazing place where creatives can just kind of come together, bounce ideas, chill, get support from their fellow creatives. It's a great community. We love it. Today, we're going to feature some work from some of our incredibly talented members.
And first of all, today we're actually excited to tell you about a special charity live stream event hosted by Corvan and Sara Burton from the Dripping Creativity podcast, part of the vibrant Creative Coffee Cafe community. This event is dedicated to raising funds for the Trevor Project, a remarkable organization committed to providing crisis intervention and suicide prevention services to LGBTQ plus youth.
The event is going to be held on Saturday, June 29th, 2024. This will be a 5-hour live streaming event beginning at 3 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. There's going to be some amazing creative showcases from artists, writers, musicians, and more, as well as some roundtable discussions on key topics for LGBTQ plus advocacy and creativity. The event will be an awesome way to just kind of raise funds and awareness for the Trevor Project and all of the incredible work that this foundation does.
Yeah, so if you or someone you know wants to get involved in this amazing fundraising event, you can reach out to the Creative Coffee Cafe account on Threads or just send a DM on Instagram. Now, all the links that will be listed in the description, so don't forget to check those out.
I'm excited for that event. I just want to say I'm really excited for it because we're going to also be doing a little feature.
Yeah, I'm excited. Yeah, it'll be fun. It'll be great.
Yes. And just a quick reminder of some of the other really cool things related to the CCC. Luna Wolf Wyoming Designs has all kinds of beautiful tumblers, mugs, and stemless wine tumblers. They offer pre-made designs and they also accept custom orders. The owner and creator Vicky has put out this special dripping creativity tumbler that is absolutely amazing, and 15% of all those sales do go back into the Creative Coffee Cafe. Vicky did also, she made one for Inks and Lattes, and I have to say,
No, I can't wait.
I snagged it. I snagged the very first one up.
Is it? Well, I was gonna say, is it available now?
It is. I just checked with Vicky before we started. It is available. She's going to be putting it on the website tomorrow, but I did snag the very first one, and I'm very excited about it.
Oh, you got a little sneak peek order there.
I did. I just snuck it in.
No, I don't blame you. Although I did get because Creative Coffee Cafe actually now has merch that has Inks and Lattes on it now too.
Yes, good point.
So I actually got I already ordered a hoodie off there,
Nice.
and you can get in lots of different colors too. So yeah, I'm excited to get that. It says sometime basically anywhere from like I think the 19th to the 31st of this month. So eventually it'll be here, and when I do, I'm definitely gonna I'll be rocking that.
Yes, that's exciting. I can't wait to get one.
Okay, also, Justin at the DM's Guide is open for TTRPG map making commissions. Our brilliant cartographer is doing this still. You can DM him on Instagram at the DM's Guide or reach out to him via his website.
And lastly, don't forget to check out the Bewitchery, a small online shop that offers candles, spell kits, jewelry, fragrances, and lots of other great witchy things. And again, all links can be found in the description.
And now it is time for our topic of the week. We're actually going to talk not necessarily about a specific piece of media. We're actually going to talk about books and just how they inspire us in general.
Well, okay, for me personally, I started reading at a really young age. I really 99% only read fiction. There are a few nonfiction things that I read, but they are few and far in between. For me, I get a lot of inspiration from books. For my writing, I know, I think it was Stephen King that said, like, if you're not inspired to write, then you should be reading. Something to that extent. It's not a direct quote, but yeah.
Somewhere around that area.
Yeah, I'm paraphrasing Stephen King there. But but yeah, I started reading at a really young age. I started reading things like The Babysitter's Club, R.L. Stein, obviously.
I do remember that one.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, scary stories to tell in the
Encyclopedia
dark.
Brown was actually one I remember reading Encyclopedia Brown when I was a kid,
See, I don't
and
remember that
that kind
one.
of gets into like yeah, and that's where it kind of gets into like so you say you're like 99% like fiction, right?
Yes.
I'm more like the I'm not 99, but like I'm more like 90% nonfiction reader. And so like Encyclopedia Brown kind of like if I was going to read fiction, it would be somewhere around that where it's kind of like it's fiction but it's like informative as well in a way too where it's like based
Hmm.
around like information and like sleuthing and stuff like that. I think Babysitter's Club is kind of like that too in that kind of they are kind of like two sides of a similar coin in that kind of sense.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I just, it's one of those things where like I I loved reading as a kid. It was my favorite thing to do. And then there was a time where I completely stopped reading for pleasure, pretty much through like middle school through high school. Because, during those years, you're forced to read books that you may not necessarily
Oh,
care about reading. At that age, I was like, I can't
yeah.
be bothered. But there were some books in there, though, that like shaped a lot of things about me as a person and about what I like to write about and the themes I like to write about. Like A Time to Kill by I believe John Grisham. Excellent movie as
Oh,
well, by
yep.
the way. And
Yeah,
that
actually, I don't think I've seen that one now that I
oh
think about it. I
God, it's
actually
so
just
good.
watched, what was it? I watched The Pelican Brief again the other day.
I haven't seen that one.
The movie, the Pelican Brief. It's from the 90s. It was with Julia Roberts and Denzel Washington.
Oh, okay.
But
Yeah.
it was based off a John Grisham book, though.
Really, yeah. And like John Grisham is not someone that I normally pick up, you know what I mean? But I forget, I think I read it as required reading like my junior senior year of high school,
Oh, okay.
and
Yeah.
um and I loved it. Like I love themes of you know people going through difficult times. Like it's my favorite kind of stories to read, to tell. The characters that have immense growth is my favorite thing. I'm really attracted to character driven novels, so that's what I like to put into my writing. And like just all the books I've read over the years have kind of inspired that kind of writing. So, yeah, for me, a lot of what I read, even through high school and stuff like that, when it was forced reading, um, really did kind of shape the way that I write now, if that makes sense.
No, it makes sense. Actually, yeah, I mean, and that's where the inspiration often comes from stuff we've like read in the past, right?
Right, right. Like, was there anything that you remember reading that just like hit you profoundly or
Well, I
anything?
remember in high school, one of the books I remember reading specifically that kind of like I don't know if like inspired me, but it was definitely one that I remember was Animal Farm.
Mm,
So actually, like Animal Farm and then 1984, both by George Orwell,
it's a
and
great
that
book.
kind of like that got me into the dystopian
Hmm.
uh, society, kind of like I wouldn't say cyberpunk, but it does have like kind of that cyberpunk roots to it, just without the whole punk part.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, so there's a lot of different ways that I think books can inspire people, and not just even from a writing perspective, more of just from like a finding a book inspiring perspective in general. Um, there's a really great book. It's called A Million Little Pieces by James Fry. It was,
Oh, yep, I remember that
do
one.
you remember that? You probably do because it got a lot of flack.
Oh, yeah, yes, yes,
It
it
did
did.
because
That is honestly that is what I remember it for was all the flack it got.
because Oprah put it on her book club. And it was put out as a nonfiction novel. His publishers kind of pushed for it to come out as nonfiction, and some of it was slightly exaggerated. However, it is based on true events of his stint in rehab. And it is a phenomenal book. Aside from all of the things, it is such a poignant tale of like someone just trying to find themselves and deal with their mental health and trying to make themselves get well, and it's just such a poignant story and I love it so much to this day. Um, what's another one? I'm trying to think. Do you have any other ones that like stick out to you that really inspired you or anything?
Well, there'll be one that I'll be talking about, like as far as my pick is concerned. So I kind of want to
Yes.
say that, although I will say, like what I got into as a kid, especially, because I don't know, like I was that weird kid where when everyone wanted to go outside for recess, I
Hmm.
wanted to stay inside and read the encyclopedia. So my like for books for me is all about information. I'm curious about stuff. I want to know more about the world. I want to know more about things. So I would stay inside. I would read the encyclopedia. I would just like even like now like I read, but what I read is like websites. I'll go down rabbit holes all the time for just
Yeah,
random information.
that
And
makes
that's what a
sense.
lot sometimes like I'll read things and that's the kind of thing that inspires me to read is like to learn. I want to learn more. I'm curious about stuff.
Yeah.
I've been told that I have an insatiable curiosity for things. So that's like my inspiration. And that the inspiration I have for doing things comes from those things that I read and I'll find this nugget of information that really like, oh, I didn't know that. And then that'll inspire me to learn more and then like do stuff from that.
Right, right. And that is funny because that makes total sense to know that about you. Just from the time that we've known each other, I'm like, yeah, that makes perfect sense, actually, that you would just absorb like nonfiction books and stuff like that. Um, yeah, I was trying to think. There was one other one. I think for me, what inspires me from books is just learning about people, like I said, like characters and stuff. There are a few. The ones that really kind of inspired me the most for how I write my characters, though, a lot of them do tend to be memoirs or, which is funny because I generally read fiction, except for those few exceptions. But yeah, there's a lot of different ones that just inspire in a lot of different ways. But I think we can probably now get into our pick of
Move
the
on to our
week.
picks.
Yeah, so our pick of the week, we're going to tell you guys about some books that have inspired us personally that we think that you should check out specifically. So if you want to do yours first, CJ.
All right, so hint about the book I picked was one that honestly I don't even remember why I picked it up in the first place.
Hmm.
I think I just it was a book called No Logo by one of my favorite authors, Naomi Klein, and she just came out with a book last year, this year, or last year I can't remember. I think it might have been the end of last year, called Doppelganger, where it gets into like just how we can have like different versions of who we appear to different people. But anyway, getting back to no logo, the idea of no logo was it was kind of like it was talking about how corporations have started to brand things, have gone from advertising about their products to
Hmm.
advertising as a brand as a whole, and how the world in general has begun to turn not just corporations but people and everything into a brand.
Ooh, that's
And
interesting.
so like yeah, and it got into how like even advertising had at the time, and this book was made in the 90s. I think it was like late 90s. Oh yeah, real late 90s. Published December 1999.
I mean, and that makes
So this is
sense
going
though.
right into like yeah.
That seems like when a lot of that kind of stuff really started to kind of take a shift. So that does make sense.
Yeah, well, it gets into like so she uses she talks about Nike and the Gap and McDonald's and Shell and Microsoft
Hmm.
and all the things that they had started to do to change from talking about their products to talking about the company as a whole
Mm,
and making you branding themselves so you're not just caring about the Big Mac, you're caring about McDonald's. You're caring about how McDonald's makes you
yeah.
feel, how Nike makes you feel,
Oh,
how
there's
the
so
Gap
many
makes you
companies
feel.
coming to mind right now when you talk about this. Like
And
Coca-Cola.
so that yeah, like that's another one right there where it's like it's not about the product, it's about the brand. It's about how how that brand tries to identify you or you identify with the brand. So
Yeah.
like Pepsi for instance, they became big because they decided to target the youth. And so at that time they became big because all the youth were like it was cool to be Pepsi, to be a Pepsi fan, and Coke was kind of just like, "Oh, that's the old school stuff."
Hmm.
And well, that was the brand. So in that sense, it wasn't about whether Pepsi was better than Coke as a product. It was whether the Pepsi brand was better than the Coca-Cola brand.
Right. I mean, that's
As
such a
far as
weird concept
inspiration
that like you
goes,
don't
though,
really think about, but once you hear it, you're like, yeah,
yeah,
that makes total sense.
And that's so when I read the book, I'm just like, oh my god, that makes a lot of sense, and that helped inspire me. Like, obviously, I picked up the book because it kind of spoke to me as far as just like, oh, this is an interesting idea. I'm gonna read
Hmm.
about this, and then reading about this really kind of like helped me realize, okay, yeah, you know what? It kind of opened my eyes to that kind of like thing, and it made me see, and then inspired me to be like, okay, I need to like. I think reading that book actually helped me to be able to manage the world as it went online with the internet, and
Huh.
specifically like social media in general, because if you think about it and you look at social media, we're all becoming a brand at this
Hmm.
point.
Hmm. It's true. It is.
And
It's.
it's kind of like it's worked our way insidiously into our lives as far as that's concerned. And
Hmm.
so sometimes it can be hard to tell people online whether they're like, whether you're looking at person, like whether you're going to be seeing DJ the person or DJ the brand, or
Right.
like your case, Eva Crowe the person,
Hmm.
or Eva Crowe the brand, the author, and stuff like that. And so they can be that kind of like, so that it inspired me to kind of like look at the world and look at just advertising and branding, and in a different way, and just corporate. Like it, honestly, like that book, and then the for follow up. Well, I'm sure it was follow up. It was actually ended up being her third book. There was another book she called that was called The Shock Doctrine, which talked about how corporations and governments will use disasters to kind of like push through unpopular ideas and economic concepts,
Mm.
because the people are looking for an answer, and they'll be like, okay, well, we'll give you like an answer if you let us pass these laws and bills that are very unfavorable. Like which when she came out with the book, it was just after Hurricane Katrina, and that was kind of what inspired her to write it, because she saw about how after Hurricane Katrina wiped out a lot of Louisiana,
Hmm.
the corporations and the governments kind of came in and pushed out a lot of the poorer people that were living in the area, so that
Hmm.
they could like put in more of the rich. And then what they also did was they took away some of the old the schools that were in the area there too, and put in their own private schools.
That's.
So they, I guess you could say like they kind of like pushed that. It helped push me more to what you would call like the left, as far as that's
Hmm.
concerned, as far as just like okay, like we need to like it definitely pushed me. I would say I pushed me into the anti-corporate kind of mindset. It
Right.
really kind of reinforced that kind of just like, all right, you know what? Yeah, I'm not like, and so I'm very like cynical and hesitant when it comes to just corporations in
Hmm.
general. And it kind of like I've always got my, and I think that book helped me to keep me like and show me, and like it showed me what it can be like, so that it helped me keep an eye open and keep that cynicism like active. And like I'm still hopeful, I want to be able to do something, but I'm also kind of like, yeah, if you
Right.
know what I mean.
I do. I
So
do.
that's where
It's.
that insatiable curiosity kind of comes in, where I'm like, okay, yeah, that I learn more about, and the more, and like the funny thing is, like my curiosity often has led me down to the path of the more, I guess you could call cerebral kind of like information gathering.
Hmm.
So I've actually really gotten into sociology and psychology and stuff like that.
Interesting. I mean, that's a really interesting book that I would never have thought to pick up, like ever. But it sounds really interesting.
But anyway, on to your pick now. Yeah, I'm
So,
actually really curious. When I saw your pick, I'm just like, ooh, okay.
yeah, I'm taking a slightly different approach. My pick is The Series Bibles for Writers by T.M. Holladay. So, I kind of stumbled upon these, I think back in 2021-ish, somewhere around there. And what they are basically workbooks that I have started utilizing while writing my stories. I'm the kind of person that in my opinion, you should never stop learning. You should never stop trying to improve. Um, and I believe really
I'm
strongly
down
in
with that.
trying, right? Like I believe in trying different things. I am very much in all aspects of my life a like don't knock it till you try it kind of person, just because you can always learn something. Um, so these books are actually really incredible. I actually have them in front of me now. There's four in the series. The only one I don't have is the plotting workbook. because at the time when I bought these, it did not exist yet. But
Oh.
so yeah, my personal favorite, well, actually, we'll start with what I have. I have these are the actual titles of them. The only fantasy workbook you'll ever need. The only character workbook you'll ever need, and the only world building workbook you'll ever need. And I highly recommend I don't even know if they're available in Kindle editions, actually, now that I think about it. I don't think they are. Because like I said, they're actual workbooks. But like if I open up the workbook, for example, um, these I've just found are incredibly inspiring when it comes to writing. There are so many things that, especially as a new writer, I wasn't really taking into consideration when I was writing, because in the beginning I was just kind of pantsing my way through everything. I had a good story idea. I decided to just start writing it again. I had written in the past and I was like, let's just do it. So, but there's things in this
See,
book,
I feel like I'm at that point right now.
right? Yeah, and I mean, you got to
Where
start
as a new
somewhere.
writer, I'm just like, yeah, I'm kind of just like, I had to write a screenplay for class, and now all of a sudden I'm just like, okay, you know what? I kind of want to continue doing this, but I've never really written before, so I'm just kind of just winging it.
Yeah, and you know what? There's honestly like nothing wrong with just winging it. That's the best way to get started, especially like if you don't have any formal training in writing, which I do not. I've written my
Me
entire
either.
life, but yeah. So like this character book, for example, in the first few pages kind of explains the book and gives you different ideas of what you're going to get. Um, there's a whole section in the beginning of the Myers-Briggs personality types. And if you're not familiar with that,
Oh, okay,
that is
I am.
yeah, you are. Okay. I am as well. I'm a huge fan of the Myers-Briggs personality type test, but it gives you a whole list of them. And like, for example, like I am an INFJ personality type. Um, and I know that because I I took the test 3 different times on 3 different websites because I doubted that I did it right, which is a typical
That sounds like
INFJ
an
trait.
INFJ kind of
Yeah.
person.
Yeah. Once I did it, I was like, well,
I
that
know
makes sense.
I am the INFP type, so very similar, very
Yeah,
similar.
yeah, very similar. So, like, if I'm looking at this in the book right now, for example, the INFJ states the counselor advocate, visionary, idealistic, insightful, dependable, gentle, creative. They have a different, profound way of looking at the world, substance and depth, never accepting things the way they are, perceived as weird or amusing, seeks harmony, cooperation. So that's one example, right? And you have all of these things, and so you can kind of utilize these things while you're building your characters. And I never thought of it in that regard. I thought of it as a
You
whole,
know
like,
what? Yeah.
right? Like you think like, okay, I have a character. This is kind of what their personality is like. They're a little sassy, they're a little whatever. But then once I started deep diving into it, I was like, okay, for my main character, Callie, like what kind of personality does she actually have deep down? Like, what are the things that drives her as a person? And so having all of this stuff just kind of it helps you hone in on details that you would maybe not have considered, especially as a new writer. And so like going forward, there's pages and it's just I love writing in general, like physically writing. And this has the whole thing is amazing. It's like I'm looking at this. So it asks you things like for every character, there's a big chunk for each one, like birth date, parents, education, residence, occupation, income, death, question mark. And so it asks you their body type. It asks you, yeah, like all of these crazy things that you would never really think that you need to have like spelled out for you, but it helps so much. And it really helps to get the inspiration going when it comes to writing. So that's just the character
Well, and I
workbook.
can see with you being like that character driven reader too,
Hmm.
I can see you being like needing that character, like that can really help to build the character that you want to make and make your writing a character
Hmm.
driven kind of writing too, right?
Right. It helps the characters hit so much harder. And it makes you really mindful when you're writing, when you're kind of utilizing things like that, with the workbooks. So there's a spot in here for secondary characters. There's all kinds of stuff in the back. There's a whole thing for notes that you make and so on and so forth. There's groups of characters. There's a section for that. The next one is like the only fantasy world book you'll ever need. This one's really great. Just skipping through it really quickly. It asks things like magic system, races, types, and species, magical items, magical animals, magic consumables, and then it breaks down different magic like archetypes in literature. So if you're not quite
Huh.
sure like what exactly you're looking for with magic, it has white magic, natural magic, elemental magic, sympathetic magic. It's all kinds of stuff in here that you would never even really think to kind of hone in that because it's not like you're going to write a book and you don't have to say this is gray magic, you know what I mean? But it helps to
Yeah,
have like an
right.
outline of like because I'm a firm believer that although you can do anything with fantasy, it needs to have structure at the same time. You know what I mean?
Oh,
Like you can't
I
just
I
do things for the
agree.
sake of
I
doing
yeah.
things.
Honestly, the kind of movies and the kind of things like that, the kind of fantasy that bugs me is when things happen for absolutely no reason. Where it's
Yeah.
just like, why did this happen? Because magic. It's like
Right.
really,
Right. When they
really,
just dismiss
and
it with
and I find that
this.
often happens.
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And so I enjoy the world building where like this stuff happens. Like I don't mind having like magic and like supernatural stuff, but
Right.
if it's going to be in something, I want it to be grounded in some kind of like
Exactly. System.
consistent kind of like a
Hmm.
reason for it. Yeah,
Right. Like there
exactly.
has to be a system. There has to be some sort of rules because even in chaos, there are rules. And so, like, that one's really great for specifically for fantasy. And then the last one that I have is the only world building workbook you'll ever need. This is a big one for me because I struggle with world building. That's what I consider to be my personal weakest part of my writing. So this book has been a huge inspiration for my world building.
You
Um,
see the forest for the trees, basically, or no, you see the trees instead of the forest.
yeah, I like when I've had a few people that have read my rough draft, that was one of the things that I was really concerned about was that I know the story, but am I portraying it to a way that someone who doesn't know it can visualize it and visualize the place and the setting? Because my whole series is set in a place called Blackridge. It's a completely fictional place, and it needs to be, it needs to have certain things that make it very real feeling for the reader. And so this workbook has been a huge inspiration for my world building. It breaks it down with things like, let me look here. So when you look at the glossary, or the contents, I should say, it asks things like biomes, geography, weather, time, um, resources and economy of the world that you're building, diversity, religion, social expectations, morals, ethics, values of the world, health and wellness, food and drink, beauty and hygiene, special occasions, like all of these things that once you read it, it seems so painfully obvious that you need those things. But like
Well, and
having it
you probably
spelled
don't even
out,
need all of them,
right.
but you don't. But you can incorporate all these different things. You can think of, and then it'll give you inspiration, right?
Exactly. You see these little things and you're like, oh, I never would have thought that I need to like kind of at some point address this aspect within the world. And it's just really, really helpful. It's such a great little series of workbooks. I cannot recommend them enough. Like even if you just flip to a page that says like diversity, it asks questions that you would never think to answer. And even if you don't include it in your book specifically, you know, it helps you build the world in your mind, and then you can build it up for the reader in a better way. Like under diversity, it says like, what do the residents look like? Is there a dominant ethnicity or species? If so, describe their general appearance. Um, are any of these, what's this one? Briefly explain notable biological diversities that exist within the people. So yeah, it's a really great series, especially for, I would say, especially for new writers. But at the same time, like I said, I think that people should always be learning and always trying to kind of hone their craft. and be willing to try new things. I mean, it's not for everybody,
Oh,
obviously. A
I
lot of people
definitely
don't
agree
like
with
it.
that.
Right, like a lot of people don't like this kind of stuff, but I also know a lot of writers like to physically write things down, and this is a really great tool for that. And it really does. I'm a big believer in writing it physically, even if it's just notes, and it kind of helps stir it in your brain. So, like, these have been a huge inspiration for me. And once I fill these up, I will just continue to buy more of them. Like, I will probably just continue to buy them. I should probably just get some on like backstock so that I have them for all of my writing, even if it's just in the early phases of my writing when I'm brainstorming and stuff like that. They're wonderful to have. So yeah, that's my pick.
Yeah. No, that was I know and it's funny because it kind of goes into like what inspires us, and because often, yeah, I do find that reading does help inspire, or that I should say, our writing is often inspired by what we read, and
Hmm.
so having a book like that can help be able to read and be like, oh yeah, 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 I should definitely include that in my writing as well.
Yeah, because I mean, inspiration comes in so many different ways. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, I'm inspired by music, books, movies, folklore, like all the things. So it's worth it to have like these little things that just kind of help inspire you. And I think that books are one of the best ways to do that, just all around, you know. But yeah, we should
No, I definitely agree because I mean, like, I'm gonna say too that books are great because reading it inspires you to think about what it looks like for
mhm,
what you're reading, right? And so that kicks off that creative that creativity. It kind of cultivates the creativity too, right? To
right.
actually like have to visualize it.
So I think we're about out of time, but yeah, this was a this was a really fun episode. I just want to say I really love this episode. I love talking books. But yeah, this is going to wrap up this week's episode of Inks and Lattes. Thank you guys for hanging out with us. Again, we're going to be here every Wednesday as part of the Dripping Creativity podcast hosted by the awesome Chris Corvan. So if you haven't subscribed already, please be sure to do that.
And if you want more information about the Creative Coffee Cafe and how you can get involved, visit the website, creativecoffeecafe.com. You can get more information there. There's a sign up form for the Discord. You can find the Discord, you can find the link to the Discord there as well. And lastly, if you have any news or projects or anything that you'd like to share or anything that you want on our podcast, send it over to submit at creativecoffeecafe.com. And if we can, we'll get it on the next episode. And thanks again for tuning in to Inks and Lattes, where we're spilling the ink and dishing out drinks. Have a good week.
Bye.